Breaking news, this is your World War III emergency update. This is going to be the most extensive meta-analysis of global geopolitical turmoil that I've ever done on this channel, and possibly the most extensive that you're going to hear on the internet, at least today. So we need to get right to it because the news cycle has been frenetic today. My head is spinning with the amount of information coming out. Everything is culminating towards that 0 day. And what comes to mind to conceptualize what's happening right now, because take note that we are far closer to that nuclear conclusion than we were yesterday. I don't know when it's going to come. I do know it's going to come. And I do know that there's probably a sexual joke in there somewhere. But one thing is for certain, that this inevitable 0 day conclusion, when the bombs finally drop, when the system just breaks. Right now it's bending, it's bowing, but someday it's going to break. And the asymptotic line symbolizes this very well, where it seems as though this 0 day, because we're constantly talking about it, we know we're getting closer. We know there was 50 things that happened today that are bringing us closer to the brink of nuclear Armageddon, but we never seem to arrive, thank God and your gods. Asymptote to the curve, two lines which are approaching each other to infinity. And let's hope that they never touch, because when they do, that's the 0 day, folks. Let's hope they never touch. Let's hope that we have time to prepare for what is about to happen. Let's just do a quick overview off the top of my head, not looking at the notes. Today, China is surrounding Taiwan in one of the biggest military drills ever. Taiwan is on the highest state of military alert that they have ever been before. The markets were red right across the board, with the exception, ironically, of the one stock that now has a total value of $2.5 trillion market cap. And guess where it's based out of? The place that's about to go to war, Taiwan. That's the only thing holding up the American stock market right now, is Nvidia stock. Wow. We have some nuclear preparations being made with the United States and Ukraine. We have Poland and NATO now seriously giving consideration to imposing a no-fly zone, or some watered-down version of a no-fly zone. Mission creep, right? In the western part of Ukraine, which will allow NATO to start shooting down Russian missiles. This at the same time as the F-16s are just days away from entering the combat zone. We have every branch of the US government today calling for the allowance of Ukraine to utilize American weapons to target inside Russian territory, okay? This is absolutely crazy. From Blinken to senators to the State Department, they're all saying the same thing, that we need to start allowing Ukraine to take this from a proxy war to a hot war with Russia. We are just on the brink. We are on a razor's edge, and most people have no idea. Even the people who, anybody who watches this channel, you know what's up. You just have that defense mechanism, weird psychology thing going on. The Polish deputy prime minister is saying that in the next couple weeks, Russia is going to do some of the biggest cyber attacks that they've done since 5 years. We have the UK advising their population that they need to prepare for 72 hours. You know why they use 72 hours, guys? It's a psychological thing. It's called psychological pricing in social psychology, where if you take things over a certain number, people start to get concerned. I'm surprised they haven't clued into the fact that they should be using 3 days, because it's actually less startling than 72. This is why women's clothing is sized in numbers that have no actual representation in the real world, like low numbers. Because they found that if you size women's clothing in numbers that are too big, because they're more self-conscious than men typically, that you don't sell as many pants. Anyways, there's a reason why they say 72 hours and not a week. Because after 72 hours, people know 9 meals from anarchy. This is where that whole thing emerges from, right? 72 hours, that's roughly 9 meals. Most people are unconsciously going to take note of, if the government wants me to prepare for a week, things must be pretty bad. Even though we know that even for any sort of disaster that should only take the government 3 days to figure things out, like something like Hurricane Katrina, when you could muster the entirety of the American trillion-dollar military to come to people's aid if they needed to. Obviously not the entirety, but you get what I mean. It could have been handled much better and more efficiently. They know that people will start to panic a little bit if they were to say you need to prepare for a week. Now, they are eventually going to move that up, but they have to get people ready and just get the process initiated. Maybe there's some 4D chess move here. This is how they're going to stimulate the economy. I don't know. But guys, that is just the tip of the iceberg for what we have to talk about today. A big one that is really on my mind lately is bird flu. Okay? You have 3 major data points to consider with bird flu. It has become pervasive and almost, I would say, definitely endemic in the bird population of the planet. Migratory birds, it's in seals, it's in cow's milk, it's jumped the species barrier, and now every other day we're hearing about another human. In fact, we'll talk about this in a moment, but there was a case of somebody who got it, healed from it, and it was only talked about just now, and it actually happened 2 months ago. This was in Australia. You have biotech stocks surging like crazy right now. Why is that? Well, maybe it's something to do with the fact that they're stockpiling millions of interventions, inoculations, for when that fateful day arises. My only question about all of this, you have this thing that's pervasive, it's going to jump the species barrier, and one more important thing of note, the media is not talking about it in the way that you think they should, considering we are told this thing has a fatality rate, at least in birds and the humans that it's infected over the years, of above 50%. Now, it's very likely that as it becomes more virulent, or should I say, as it becomes more, what's the word? It evades me at this point in time. As it becomes more ubiquitous and it starts to spread faster, it is going to likely become less lethal and less virulent over time. Regardless, even if it goes down to 5%, I mean, that is a society killer. If we have a 5% fatality rate, ain't nobody going to work. And it's going to be just like that movie Contagion. You're going to see fist fights over the inoculation that may or may not even work, because of course it's going to be similar to the flu and it's only going to treat last year's version. This is why I encourage people, right now, you can actually get Tamiflu through Jace Medical. This is the time to stock up on that. I mean, whether bird flu comes or not, it's a foregone, it's going to come. It's just a matter of when, right? Another sexual joke for you. We're going to talk about that. I got some facts. I got some stats to back it all up. I got receipts for all of this stuff, my friends. Let's just go back to World War III for a second. The U.S. is training for possible nuclear emergency. Now, we know that they've been doing this since 2022. They've been putting the sensors, the nuclear sensors, into place in and around Ukraine in anticipation of a Russian nuclear strike. This was long before the Russians ever were even talking about the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus or anywhere near the conflict zone for that matter. We know that they've been providing Ukraine with personal protective equipment. We know that the Ukrainians have been building out nuclear anti-radiation fallout shelters. We've talked about this months ago, probably almost a year ago now. So we know that they're getting ready for this, but why are they calling attention to it now? Jill Hruby, the administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration, is now talking about how they're working to reduce nuclear risks in Ukraine. Nuclear risks. So they want people to just imagine that this is just about the nuclear power plants. Now, sure, that's a great delivery system to prepare for nuclear Armageddon. The thing that's concerning is that this particular article is from a Russian media source called TASS, their main media source, their most official one, kind of like their BBC of sorts. Very professional, no frills, not sensationalist at all, okay? And now Russia is calling attention to Ukraine preparing for a possible nuclear emergency as Russia has tactical nukes locked and loaded on the border. Now, you have the U.S. State Department, Blinken, and all these guys talking about, let's unleash the dogs of war. Let's let Ukraine start striking deep into Russian territory. And this is all branches of government agreeing to this. So the only one standing in the way of this at this point is Joe Biden, okay? But why is it that the Russians are calling attention to this now when this has been going on all the while is incredibly concerning. That they're building out all of this stuff has been known about for some time, but now they're talking about it, okay? And understand that you have the culmination of, I would say, half a dozen key factors here. You have the deployment of tactical nukes under the guise of a drill. It's not a drill. The invasion of Ukraine started off as a drill, okay? You have the U.S. allowing Ukraine now, or will very soon, to allow them to use ATACMS to attack targets deep inside Russia, even though they've already been doing this with drones, but maybe arguably the drones are less capable and can't pack as much of a punch. You have Poland talking about the imposition of a no-fly zone, or a more limited no-fly zone, defensive style, augmented no-fly zone. It will be less offensive to the Russians. Nonetheless, mission creep. You have, I mean, everything else. This talking about training for possible nuclear emergencies. You have the delivery of the F-16s any day now. All of these things are coming together at once. Plus, you have Steadfast Defender peaking with 100,000 NATO troops, give or take, and the militarization of Poland. You have 10,000 different micro data points happening in Poland that all point towards war. You have the Latvian government releasing that document recently, the 72 hours, not called 72 hours, but was really a guide to how to survive World War III. So we're approaching the 0 day. That's all you need to know. Okay, Blinken and senators call for attacks inside Russia. This is absolutely insane, how we've gotten here. And the fact that all branches of government agree that Mike Johnson, the U.S. House Speaker, supported the idea on camera, admitting that allowing Ukraine to strike military facilities on Russian territory with U.S. weapons was a good idea. Okay, and Blinken also echoed the same sentiment, calling for attacks inside Russia. The State Department suggests that the White House allow Ukrainian armed forces to use American weapons for strikes against Russia. That's from the New York Times. This is no longer a proxy war. This is NATO trainers, okay, utilizing NATO weapons, likely with NATO mercenaries from a country that borders Russia, shooting missiles inside Russia, targeting anything from their nuclear facilities to their military bases, to critical infrastructure. How are the Russians not supposed to respond with nuclear weapons? You see what I mean when we're getting ever so closer to this game of nuclear chicken? Have you ever heard of Zeno's paradox? Zeno's paradox is the idea that, let's say you have a runner who's running a race. Well, how do you ever get somewhere if every number approaches infinity? Like how, if it's 100 meters, if you actually believe math, 99.999999, it goes on to infinity. So how do you ever get somewhere if you can infinitely have something? Well, that's the same thing that's happening right now, it seems. It's like we think we're almost on the brink. Like, I mean, we think things can't escalate before going vertically, but then another move is made. And now we're essentially at the point where the U.S. is about to green light attacks using ATACMS missiles. Not just the drones, which they've empowered the Ukrainians with the technology and the know-how and the funding with already, but the actual ATACMS missiles, the guidance systems, they're already using satellites, US satellites. So really, is this even a red line? Or is this just Zeno's paradox again? Where we're going to get there and the US is going to be using ATACMS, and the Russian strategic forbearance is going to allow this can to be kicked down a road a little bit more. I hope so, because I'm not ready for nuclear Armageddon yet. We're getting there. And then you have the Russians on the other side, who have live tactical nukes locked and loaded, ready to go under the guise of a military exercise. I don't know how many more moves we have to make before shit hits the fan, before a nuke is used and the Karaganov doctrine is employed, but it can't be that many. It really can't be that many. Everybody and their dog is talking about nuclear Armageddon nowadays. And I mean everybody. It's become so commonplace and normalized, and people are so desensitized to it that I'm concerned that if and when it happens, people are going to get really excited and panicked about it when they first hear about it, And then with the next couple days, the normalcy Normans are going to come out of the woodwork when the big one doesn't happen right away. And then another nuke is going to be fired, and we're going to get used to that. And this is why I tell people, don't panic right when the first tactical nuke drops. I would panic when China gets involved in this whole thing, because that's when things become very unpredictable. There are no nuclear treaties with China. Never mind this bullshit about China only has 400 nuclear weapons. We don't know how many nuclear weapons they or the North Koreans have. We can only speculate, okay? It's like estimating wildlife populations. These numbers, the range is so wide, it's almost useless to even talk about. So we know that we're getting closer and closer every day. And my friends, you need to take preparation seriously. I might as well do the sponsor pitch for today's video. It's us, CanadianPreparedness.com. That's the great thing about this channel, is we can march to the beat of our own drum. We don't have to appease any sponsors, which is why we can pretty much say and do what we want, of course, within the framework of the YouTube guidelines. Now, I'd encourage you, if you're praying for nuclear war, you got to get your gas mask. That's number one, okay? You got to get your Geiger counter. Made in Canada, limited quantities. These things, after the first nuke drops, are gone in the first hour, okay? So are all the gas masks, just like the pandemic. And when the bird flu comes, if you think that the last thing was bad, the cerveza bug, boy, you haven't seen nothing yet. We got advanced tactical kits with clotting agents, tourniquets, the whole 9 yards. We got all kinds of medical supplies. We got your anti-nuke, anti-radiation pills, thyroid blocking pills, things like this Israeli bandage. These Israeli bandages are one of the #1 staples that you should have in your first aid kit. They're just so incredibly well made and useful and simple. The most important thing, simple. We have full hazmat suits, okay? Like hazmat suits that are breathable, that you can actually wear. We have cheaper ones that aren't exactly breathable, but they'll keep you alive. And when I say breathable, certain hazmat suits, especially if you live in a warm climate, you're gonna have to keep yourself cool if you plan on being it for an extended period of time. Now, when the bombs drop, you wanna be in a place that can insulate you from the gamma radiation and the beta and alpha, which is pretty much easier to deal with. But for the most part, the hardest thing is going to be resisting the gamma radiation. We're going to have a nuclear physicist come on, and we're going to show you how you can build out your space, your basement, or even if you don't have a basement, the best thing you can do in order to protect yourself against that. Now, I hope it never comes to this, guys, because if it does, I mean, it's Mad Max. Either way, best case scenario we have to look forward to at this point in time is dystopia, cyberpunk. Worst case is Mad Max. Personally, I don't know. I don't know what's worse. I mean, dystopia or Mad Max? I really don't know, because in one of those cases, you're dealing with excessive rule of law, probably some AI tyranny, universal basic income, 15-minute city ordeal, and the other one, you're kind of free to roam the wasteland, but everybody's trying to kill you. I don't know, part of me wants to take my chances with the wasteland, but anyways. So I cannot believe that Blinken is calling for Ukraine to be allowed to use these weapons inside of Russia. Get a load of this. The proposal was put forward by Secretary of State Blinken after a sobering visit to Kiev. Well, he certainly didn't look too sober when he was rocking out to the free world, playing that Neil Young riff. Keep on rocking in the free world in that bar, that nightclub in Kiev. His position on the issue has changed due to the opening of a new front by the Russians. So this is all because they opened the new Kharkov front? Really? No. The plan has been the plan. Okay, now the plan is just being unveiled. That's important to understand. Is that yes, they're probably flying by the seat of their pants and improvising to a certain degree, but they always planned on going to war with Russia. Okay? And they're setting it up in Europe right now to do the only thing they know how to do, and that's a decapitation strike. And even our friends over there in that clique of people like McGregor's and the Ritters and stuff, we've been talking about this for the longest time, But now they're all starting to clue into what's going on, that NATO, in fact, is likely going to be the one that initiates a decapitation strike, because that's really the only option. Russia outdoes us in almost every metric in terms of strategic nuclear war. They got better nuclear bunkers. They got a massive landmass. They have better nuclear weapons systems. Their populations are more protected. They don't have the civil unrest that we do here. The division, you know, they have a homogenous society. I mean, I could go on. I've done videos about this before. But in terms of technology, as far as we know, unless the United States already has their stuff up there in space, which is why the Russians are rushing to get, to get their stuff out into space, or either way, we know that there's a space-based warfare going on as we speak. I mean, that was obvious with Space Force, in the introduction of that. That started probably way back in the Cold War era, but now they're starting to kick it into high gear. None of these treaties are worth the paper they're printed on at this point in time, okay? The US has now deployed 4 strategic bombers to the UK, okay? These are bombers that can carry nuclear weapons. Recall, we talked about the fact that they're going to be sending 50 F-35s that can carry the tactical B-61 bombs to the UK, and that they're building out the infrastructure for that. So if you're Russia right now and you see the United States moving all of these assets, they just struck a contract with Rolls-Royce to build a new Doomsday plane. The new B-2 bomber just came out today, or is doing the flight testing today. Some footage came out of that. You have the forward deployment of all these F-35s into different parts of Europe. You have the NATO expansion. You have the new tactical nuclear bombs. Now you have these 4 strategic bombers to the UK. In addition to that, you've had other bombers, B-1s, deployed to Sweden earlier in February and Spain in March. Now you have France testing out first firing of an ASMPAR nuclear air-launched cruise missile. They did this on the same day that Russia has started these tactical nuclear drills. You think that's just a coincidence? These aren't coincidences, my friends. In an operation simulating a nuclear raid, France, which has first strike nuclear policy, something that the Russians nor the Americans have, regardless, these nuclear doctrines, they're not arbitrary. So just because a country has a nuclear doctrine doesn't mean that if they don't see the opportunity, they're not going to do a first strike. Essentially, Russia and the United States, I think the United States actually does have a first strike policy, or they just augmented it in an update to the nuclear doctrine a year and a half ago or so. But regardless, they'll never really admit to that openly. They'll say something to the effect of, in certain circumstances, we may have to utilize nuclear weapons. I think that's how they worded it, because they probably want to use nukes against defenseless countries that don't have nukes. Not the Russians, right? Because they know that means nuclear Armageddon for them. So France does have a first strike nuclear policy. And really, if you're France, you almost have to, because how can you defeat Russia? I mean, Russia just is a much larger country. They're much more well prepared. They have a much larger military. They have a lot more nuclear toys that the French have no defense for, and neither do the Americans. What, we have 40 missiles to defend against all of Russia's nuclear arsenal? So forget about it. It's game over. Unfortunately, though, billions will survive, and that's why we prepare. Now, Russia today has threatened the UK, of all places. And it's interesting, I don't know how the British politician thing factors into this, the election coming up, but something's going on with that too. They're testing the waters for something, I just don't know what. They're doing it now before Trump, maybe. Maybe there's something to do with that. There's still that whole potential for civil war in the United States. Geez, we got every possible front of calamity and chaos unfolding at the same time. Russia is threatening the UK because in the last 24 hours, Crimea, really in the last month, Crimea has been hit hard ever since the delivery of this last dose of Storm Shadow missiles and Scalp missiles. The Ukrainians have been targeting Crimea heavily. And remember, there was a time 2 years ago where Medvedev said that if you strike Crimea at all, This is before any missile ever landed in Crimea. If you strike Crimea at all, it'll be nuclear Armageddon. Now they do it every single day. And they're trying to get closer and closer to this Kerch Bridge because it's a symbolic Pyrrhic victory of sorts. Probably not going to be that meaningful now, considering Russia has this land bridge and train delivery system that's through the southern part of Ukraine here, okay? Through this part of Ukraine. But regardless, I mean, that's how close we are. Every day, day in and day out, they're using Storm Shadow missiles from the UK. Now, Russia has said today, officially, and this is something you only used to hear Russian pundits say, like the crazy guys on the primetime TV shows who always fantasize about nuking Britain with the, what are they called, the Beluga, what are they called? Poseidon nukes, 100 megaton nuke to induce a tsunami that would just completely cover and put all of the UK underwater, that sort of thing. Well, now it's becoming a reality, because listen to this. Russia has warned it would strike British targets if Ukraine uses British weapons against Russian territory. Now, of course, the question is, what does Russia mean by Russian territory? The Ukrainians have already been striking Russian territory. Crimea and the annexed territories, at least according to the Russian jurisdiction, is their territory. So are they just referring to the Russian mainland? Because clearly that line has been overstepped thousands of times already. So Russia has refrained from specifying the British targets, but cited the possibility of Ukraine using British weapons as one of the reasons why it's carrying out its tactical nuclear drills right now. So, for anybody who thinks that Russia has this in the bag, why is Russia being forced to put these tactical nukes on the highest state of readiness in the firing position if they had this in the bag and they were just steamrolling through Kharkov? This is why, if you really want a truly objective picture of the battlefield, never just listen to one side, because every side is going to have their bias. And because they're trying to build the morale of their side, which is understandable, it's war, you have to do that, they're going to lie. Or they're going to fudge the data to make it look a bit more in their favor. But I can tell you right now, there's a reason why all of those pundits, those contrarian Western pundits, who are constantly saying that the Russians have won this and that the Ukrainians are depleted and destroyed, they've been saying the same thing for 2.5 years. Now, eventually, they'll probably be true in some way, shape, or form. What they're saying is going to materialize. Russia will be victorious in some way, whatever that means. The goalpost is going to continue to be moved. But until that day, so long as you got countries like Sweden investing billions of dollars, the EU as a whole, the Americans day after day delivering new weapons packages because they know what's at stake. The entire financial system is at stake. They have to take down China, and the only way you can do that is by first going through the easier target, which is crazy to say, but it's Russia. Eventually, they're going to do China. China knows it. Remember, Putin and Xi Jinping just hugged. Now, Putin is going to Belarus, and he's hugging the other guy, Lukashenko. And all of a sudden, after this meeting that they have, Xi Jinping orders his militaries to surround Taiwan. Now, I don't know if the seasons are right for an advance there yet. I don't know I know there's a certain window that if you do want to do an invasion of Taiwan or a blockade, might be a little easier, might be a little different. But if you actually wanted to do a landed invasion, you have to time it to the weather in that region. And apparently there's only a few periods throughout the year. I can't remember what they were off the top of my head. Maybe like spring and then later in the fall, where the ocean currents and stuff will permit that. So, you know, what this is going to amount to, I don't know. We'll talk about it in just a moment. But all of these things connect. You know, one of the most annoying statements I get on the channel is, why don't you talk more about what's happening in Canada? We live in a global world, okay? When a butterfly takes a shit over there in China, it can cause tsunamis over here. I know that's not how that saying is supposed to go. Butterfly flaps its wings, the butterfly effect. When there's any perturbation in this energy field, in any part of the matrix, it has repercussions throughout the rest of the world. And so all of these things are interconnected. NVIDIA with the chips and Taiwan and the US economy and the oil that feeds the Chinese industry that comes from Russia, who's attacking Ukraine, who's allied with Iran, and they all have their proxy conflicts all over the world. It's all interconnected, and if you really truly want to understand what's going on in your locale, you have to, in a globalized world, understand what's going on the grand stage. So Russia's threatening the UK. I don't know why they're not pursuing the same aggressive talk with the United States. Well, I do kind of know why to an extent. Maybe UK is an easier target, and they're trying to send a message to the United States by targeting the UK, and it's no surprise that those 4 strategic bombers have now entered the UK, and it's kind of like, I suppose the equivalent on the other end would be Poland and NATO threatening Belarus. Well, Russia is going to threaten one of the vassal states of the United States, which of course is the UK. So all of this stuff just happening at the exact same time, absolutely crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. And we'll talk about the UK preparedness program in just a moment. Kharkov evacuation continues. Another 11,000 were told to evacuate, but I assure you that for every 11,000 they tell to evacuate, history would dictate that probably 10 times that amount of people have already fled of their own volition already. That is, of course, the second largest city. Kharkov, where is Kharkov? It's right over here. Zoom out there. Kharkov is right here. So it's a big city. But there's no bodies of water, and I don't know if there's any real natural obstacles. It's pretty open terrain here. You could do some maneuver warfare. It's not heavily forested. Unlike Kiev, there's lakes and there's dams and there's rivers and things of that nature. So it gets a lot more complicated from a logistical point of view to try to get in there and actually do something like that. But this is why the Crimean attacks are ramping up. Norway is closing its border crossing with Russia. So this is just one of those things. You got diplomats being expelled, borders being closed. The map is being redrawn arbitrarily by the Russians. But Norway, up here, this is where they border Russia. There's just this little tiny sliver up here. Okay, where is it? Right up here. So that little border there is where Russia borders Norway, and that's now been closed. The Finnish border has already been closed with Russia, probably for going on 6 months now. Norway is closing the border for Russian tourists and shoppers. This comes to the last open land border to Schengen, Europe, for Russian citizens traveling for leisure and non-essential travel. So this is it. This is the Iron Curtain. They're sealing the deal. Russian border guards are removing markers from the Estonian river, redrawing national boundaries. Now, this is one of those things that's a very localized issue, but it could have broader repercussions. I don't know where this particular river is in this region, but essentially it's a body of water that is at the intersect of Russia and Estonia. Okay, and this is not the Baltic Sea thing. That's a whole different issue where Russia was resetting the boundaries here. This is a more localized thing, but essentially what's happening is that Russia disagreed with the locations of approximately half of the 250 markers that were agreed upon with Estonia, and some of them were removed Thursday morning, and there wasn't any shots fired, but this is how things happen. This is almost like a little mini shot across the bow from Russia, keeping the pressure on NATO, because right now Sweden has pledged $7 billion for Ukraine, and Sweden is starting to say, well, we think the Russians are going to try to take over this Gotland Island here, which is a very strategic island in the middle of the Baltic Sea. In fact, many U.S. generals have said, whoever controls this island controls the Baltic Sea. For one, it's an unsinkable aircraft carrier. I guess when it comes to nuclear Armageddon, it's probably not that safe. Nowhere is safe. Certainly not there. But in a conventional war, it is very useful, and even in terms of its strategic utility with radars and nuclear detection and anti-missile defense systems, it's very useful. So the Swedes are saying that, hey, we're worried Russia is going to try to take this over. Now, even the most disingenuous of Western media pundits say that's bullshit and say that it's very unlikely that Russia is going to have the capability to do that. I mean, for starters, St. Petersburg is 300 miles away. Kaliningrad is far away. Russia has their own problems. They're not going to start attacking, you know, this, what is it called, Gotland Island anytime soon. So what really they're trying to do is Sweden is using it as an excuse to heavily militarize this, to try to completely encircle Kaliningrad, not only on both sides from Lithuania and Poland, but also from the sea, and truly keep this as a NATO lake, as they call it. So shit's getting real. Shit is getting very real. And again, the Russians were redrawing their international waterway boundaries here in the Gulf of Finland. So they're starting to push back. We are so close. Every single day, another thing like this happens. And I don't know what the ultimate tipping point is going to be. And I don't care to just wait around to find out. But there is a point. You know, a friend of mine asked me today, they're like, when do I bug out? Because I think the question was, what do I think the odds are that this bird flu thing is going to happen? The odds of the bird flu thing happening, and why that's pertinent to this, because it could factor in a couple ways. If this still goes on, while the bird flu kicks in, it's going to make it much worse. And it's going to make it easier for all countries to impose the level of martial law and to get everybody separated and ready for war, into war mobilization mode. It'll be much easier to administer the post-collapse stimmy checks in the form of military rations under a pandemic. Or, hopefully, bird flu actually tempers these hostilities a little bit. That could be the one saving grace here, is that we have a global pandemic and everybody is dealing with so many domestic issues that the fighting just subsides and people just agree, okay, like we got bigger things to deal with here. I don't think that's going to happen. Either way, they're both shit hits the fan scenarios. On the one hand, you have government tyranny. On the other hand, you have nuclear war. Very likely you're going to get both. You're going to get the best of both worlds, nuclear war and tyranny. If you want to know what it's going to look like, watch the movie Threads. That's one that they need to remake. I just hope that they do it in a way that is honest and not too woke, because that is one of the most realistic portrayals of nuclear war ever made. Zelensky is now going to be traveling to France to ask the UK to shoot down Russian missiles from Poland and surrounding states. Zelensky will ask NATO to shoot down missiles of the Russian armed forces, as the United States and Great Britain did when Iran hit Israel, writes Politico. Fairly, or as reputable as it's going to get in terms of news agencies nowadays. And Poland is also considering this. And this is not just some random pundit, okay? We're talking about the foreign ministry spokesperson, Paweł Wronski, told Ukrinform news outlet on Wednesday that they're considering using its air defense systems to shoot down Russian missiles over Ukraine. Now, you have to have that in place, I think, before you bring in the F-16s. And what they're going to do is they're going to call this a no-fly zone light, where it's not really a no-fly zone because the Russians can still fly in there. We're just going to shoot down any missiles that are coming in, or within a certain degree. And then they're going to continue to move the goalposts, and eventually Russia is going to be forced to attack the bases in Poland, which is why right now they're currently ramping up security around one of the primary logistic hub airports inside Poland. They're ramping up security for that. There's been a bunch of different sabotage acts that they're trying to blame on the Russians inside Poland. In fact, another guy was caught today. He was trying to sabotage, I have the story here somewhere. I can't remember what it was, some critical infrastructure. But it's going kinetic. The hybrid war is going kinetic inside Poland. And so all of these things interrelate. This is why these videos are so long-winded. You can't possibly cram all this stuff and do it any degree of justice or analysis by just rattling off the data points. In addition to that, we have the situation in Georgia developing, okay, where this is huge. Georgian Prime Minister, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Somebody can give me the phonetic spelling in the comments section below. Should I try to butcher it? Okay, let's have some fun. Irakli Kabakidze, I didn't do too bad there, has claimed that a European commissioner told him he could end up suffering the same fate as Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, who suffered an assassination attempt last week, if he doesn't comply and allow NATO to do another Maidan coup 2.0 in Georgia. Basically, threatening him with assassination, okay? So I don't think, the more and more I think about the Iranian thing, the more and more that looks really, really dirty to me. Whether or not, and we'll get into, we've got a Middle East portion coming here, but this is very serious because essentially that's tacit admission of guilt that you were complicit in that attempt, that assassination attempt against Robert Fico. Essentially telegraphing to anybody who is pro-Russian or pro-Eastern that we're not just going to try to bankrupt you. We're not just going to try to get you embroiled in some scandal, okay, like the Tates or something. We're going to, well, I guess they kind of brought that on themselves. That's probably not a good example, but you know what I mean. Trump, what he's going through. We're not just going to do that. We're actually going to try to assassinate you. So this is serious. I'm seeing an increasing amount of fistfights in a lot of these European countries in their parliaments nowadays. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed that. But according to the Hungarian foreign minister, Hungary is one of those countries who's also kind of moderate when it comes to these issues, has basically said the risk of World War III grows daily. And this is what I said at the beginning of this video. It's growing every day. So the normalcy Normans out there, just because it hasn't happened yet, doesn't mean we're not closer than we were. Very few and far days in between nowadays can I say that tensions are dying down a bit. They just haven't for the last 3 or 4 years. It's just been constant escalating tension. He noted that there has been no day without another crazy statement uttered by some of the European politicians. There are those who want to send soldiers to Ukraine. Others are already speculating about the use of nuclear weapons. Every day the threat of world war is getting closer, he says. And now, this is where the two things intersect, because with all of this threat of World War III, and this is a world war, people truly need to, if you want to understand what's going on in any given country, you have to understand how it factors in. China is the major threat that the United States is concerned about, and the way to get through China is through Russia. Let me see if I have my Thucydides trap graphic here somewhere. Okay, this graphic right here. Check this out. This is it. This is it in a nutshell. This is Thucydides trap visualized. Thucydides trap is the idea that a rising superpower is a threat to an established one. So the established superpower has to make a choice. When they're seeing their adversary on the come up, do they intercept that and try to fight them when they're weaker, when they know that at some point they're not going to be able to compete? And that is what's happening right now with Taiwan. But take a look at this chart. Interest payments on federal debts are set to overtake defense spending this year as the third largest category of spending. Now talk about a beautiful visualization of Thucydides trap. Because what this means is that the American military global reserve currency powerhouse, look at this spike in the interest rate. Now, I mean, this is just one. These are just two different data points that we're comparing here. But it's symbolic because this means that the amount that we're spending on our military is now being exceeded by the amount of interest on the debt. And this is why China is unloading US treasuries at a breakneck speed and stockpiling gold, copper, grain, oil, all the commodities they're going to need to fight World War III. This is it. This is the end of everything. The end of the American empire. This is it. This is the peak. Okay, now maybe the Dow is going to go to 70,000 at some point. But what is 70,000 going to be worth? That's the real question. The market could melt up or it could melt down. It really doesn't matter because this really is the end of the US empire. And we only have ourselves to blame for that. What else do we got to talk about here? Oh boy. Talk about the nuclear, we talk about that, we talk about that. All right. I talked about Rolls-Royce winning the contract for the new Doomsday planes. So Rolls-Royce is going to be building out a new version of the E-4B Doomsday plane. This is a plane that can still function and be survivable. A survivable airborne operations center that will resist electromagnetic pulses and nuclear blasts. I don't know about the latter so much, but certainly resist electromagnetic pulse, okay? And so they're redoing this, and this just shows you, I mean, the lack of foresight. If they knew all this shit was gonna go down back in 2014 when Nuland started getting her nose in Ukraine, why wouldn't they have done this a long time ago? Did they not want to trigger the Russians? Who knows? But the US Air Force also released some imagery, some video footage of the B-21 Raider. I don't have any pictures up here. I have them on my sheet, but this thing looks like a bird. You know, it's incredible the biomimicry of this technology. It's really designed to look like a falcon or something like that that's in a nosedive version of flight, to be as aerodynamic and sleek as possible. Is it going to be that important in modern warfare? You know, with cyber attacks, with EMPs, with the fact that the Russians are just going to launch the Sarmat missiles from, you know, halfway across the world, and we're not going to be able to defend against them. What utility do bombers have? The bombers, we've talked to many guests who are educated in this area of expertise, and they said that they still do have a utility, but should we be investing all that money in that at this point in time? I mean, really, these types of weapon systems are more tailored to not necessarily a peer adversary, but I guess it depends on how good Russia's missile defense is. Anyways, we still have this issue of space, and really on every dimension, every strata of the planet, whether it's the human sphere or the outer sphere, there is war being waged, and war is ramping up. We have Mike Turner claiming that Russia is building space nukes. We've been talking about this for the last couple days. Russia sent a rocket into space the other day that now the Americans claim was at least part of a system that's going to be used for ASAT, anti-satellite technology. And it's going to be designed to perpetually circle the globe and challenge NATO satellites. Now, both sides are accusing the other. So we know that there's a space-based arms race currently happening right now. Both sides are going to continue to say, you know, you're doing this, and continue to point the finger, but all the while, they're both rapidly militarizing space. And our boy Elon Musk is partaking in that. His SpaceX company is now pretty much fully integrated with the US military-industrial complex, and they're putting up space satellites and God knows whatever other stuff they're putting up there. And of course, Starlink will be leveraged militarily when the time is right. You can mark my words about that, to track people or to do whatever. They say that I have a picture here. This is a picture of the Cosmos 2553 satellite that they claim is the satellite that this was actually launched, I believe, in, was it 2019? I can't remember. Actually, you know what? We got plenty of other stuff to talk about, so I don't want to talk about this. Polish saboteur was arrested, okay? Actually, you know what? There's something I need to talk about first before we talk about the acts of sabotage inside Poland. The Polish deputy prime minister, my Polish source sent me this information. Oh boy, can I pronounce this one? Krzysztof Gokowski. That's as far as I'm going. In a radio interview, stated that intelligence reports suggest that during the next 2 weeks, there will be major cyber attacks carried out by Russia, the biggest ones since the last 5 years. These could hit infrastructure, water, power, etc. He suggested following expert advice by storing food and water in advance, as well as taking out large amounts of cash and preparing alternative methods of communication outside cellular phone networks. Isn't it funny how there is this coordinated public information awareness campaign by all the countries, and it's all being rolled out at the same time, just like we said it was going to. You have the UK, warning, they got their new Prepare website. Take a look at this. Okay, and they always say some bullshit like, yeah, you need to prepare for flooding and power cuts and fires, and yeah, that's what we want you to prepare for. Not nuclear Armageddon, or whatever pathogen escapes our clutches once again. Emergencies such as flooding, blah, blah, blah. Kiss your ass goodbye. Did they write that in there anywhere? Oh, they don't. Let me see here. Here's a few things you can do. Find out if you're eligible to sign up to your gas, electric, and water suppliers' priority service registers so they know you need additional support if there's an interruption in your supply. So this is so vanilla. This is like the Mickey Mouse of prepping. But what they're doing, you know, even all the emergency alerts and stuff, is they're just slowly massaging it into the population, not creating a panic, just getting a general cultural of preparedness. And that's when, boom, full war mobilization mode, conscription, stuffing people in the backs of vans. The commissars, the jackboot thugs will be out in full force. Send your ass and your progeny off to the front line to die for some rich asshole you'll never meet. How to shop with your war ration book. This is World War II. In fact, we have a heritage museum here in town. And if any of you guys are in Saskatoon, there is a part of the heritage museum where they have this little display with these rations, and they have the actual rations there, the boxes and the cans, and just these food stamps. So for me, I jokingly call these Mad Max stimmy checks, because this is going to be the stimulus check. I mean, look at the price of food nowadays. The shrinkflation. Even if there were no shrinkflation, the price of food is outrageous, and you're getting a lower grade, a lower nutritional quality food. I mean, this is coming in some other digital form. It's going to be your phone. You scan your QR code and you get a certain amount of, you know, GMO apples every week. It's an ugly future, man. That's why everybody needs to get a garden. It's not even if you're upper middle class, even if you're wealthy now, it makes financial sense to perform the labor it takes to grow your own food from a nutritional point of view, from a just a convenience point of view, like the freshness aspect of it. We have plenty of gardening videos that we've done with our friend over at the Gardening in Canada YouTube channel. You guys got to check those out. Give those videos some love. They don't get a lot of views because there's not a lot of bang bang and, you know, alarming people out of their wits. But they're very important. All of that practical preparedness stuff, we're going to be doing a lot more of that. In fact, I just finished this past weekend building some raised garden beds, and I don't plan on growing all my food that way. A lot of it's going to be grown in a greenhouse, possibly a passive solar greenhouse. I'm going to do the greenhouse first and then maybe do a passive solar greenhouse afterwards. But I know it's going to be one of those investments that pays itself off, because food is going to be at a premium in the future, unfortunately. Secretary Anthony Blinken is announcing a new visa restriction policy for those responsible for undermining democracy in Georgia, including in connection with the Georgian Dream's proposed foreign influence legislation. So the Georgians, they don't want us to mess with their political system. So apparently we don't like that. And we're going to punish them for not allowing us to do that. So this is I don't know if this is real, to be brutally honest. It's being shared a lot, but it's one of those things that could probably easily be faked. This is CBS News being hacked by Ukrainians. What's our battery life look? Oh, we got 50%. We're good to go. We're going to break a record for the longest video ever released on the Canadian Prepper YouTube channel today. Ukrainian hacks CBS News live. Why would you do CBS and not Fox? Maybe CBS didn't have good cybersecurity. But anyways, they basically, let's just play this here. I'm not going to play the volume. This news station gets hacked by Ukraine, so they say. They say, planning on going to a Trump rally? You better think twice. We will kill you. That's actually what they say. Think twice, because then they show some footage of a mass shooting incident, which I won't show because I don't want the video to get flagged. Enemies of Ukraine will be punished, they claim. And they got this little fallout motif picture of Trump there. And then they show a picture of Raisi, implying that he was assassinated, which the jury's still out, but there's a distinct possibility. Fico was definitely attempted to be assassinated and had help, and that is now official news that there was backers behind that guy. And then, of course, you are next, man arrested of threatening Serbian President Vučić, and then Trump calls him a liar, a traitor, a murderer. An enemy of Ukraine is an enemy of America, as they say, and they're all cheering here. Now, stay home, ignore the Trump rally, glory to Ukraine. Now, this could easily be construed as something that, and this is going to be crazy if it isn't, because to put the blame on the Russians for something this egregious, if it was conducted by an actual pro-Ukrainian hacker syndicate, wouldn't be cool. But, you know, it's so on the nose that you almost have to think that was this the Russians doing this to make the Ukraine look bad? Because nobody would agree with this. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum. If you're pro-Ukrainian, you're thinking to yourself, this is this is a little too much. A little risque, but hey, maybe some people go for it, and then it goes back. So this easily could have been one of two things. This could just all be fake, and whoever uploaded this video spliced it in and made it look as though, you know, it was a hack job, or it was actually done by the Russians, or it's legit, and they're just that crazy, and they've let that entitlement go to their head, which, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. So many entitled people walking around nowadays. Geez, you know, I left one of the biggest stories, and we're already an hour into the video. I don't know is anybody still watching? Let me know in the comment section if you made it to the 57-minute mark. Holy shite. So they arrested a Polish saboteur, okay, today, who wanted to blow up a railway line in Poland, along which goods are delivered to Ukraine. So you can see the war slowly creeping into Poland. Now, Donald Tusk is saying that Russia was likely behind the shopping mall fire attack that happened about a week ago. There's been another fire in Europe. The headquarters of Novo Nordisk, Europe's largest company, is on fire. So we're starting to see Russia potentially, maybe Russia, or maybe it's just, you know, your run-of-the-mill, statistically expected fires occurring. But this was a pharmaceutical company. I would not put it past the Russians for starting to ramp up their own asymmetrical type war on Europe. So let's go over to the east, to Taiwan, where everything rides on right now. When I say everything, let me pull up a chart for you here. This is one of the most telling, symbolic charts. Look at that. The only thing green is NVIDIA, up 10%. 10%. And you know why? Because they're going to do a stock split. That's not the only reason why. They also beat their earnings, right? Because everyone's rolling out this AI. And somebody made an interesting point today that I read about AI, is that nobody's really asking for AI at this point. It's not really demand driven. They're just building it as fast as they can. And you have to ask yourself, why are they building it? This is the quote. The whole AI thing is remarkable to me. This is from David Roberts on X. It's the first tech development in my life that, to a first approximation, no consumer is asking for. It's not demand driven. The dudes, almost all dudes who run things, have just decided we're getting it whether we want it or not. Now, there might be some truth to that. I mean, did people use the internet before it was created? I don't think it's being pushed like it's being pushed now. So clearly, it's likely being fueled by the military-industrial complex in some way, shape, or form. Because if you figure out AGI, and this is why right now we're like a little child playing with a hydrogen bomb. This is not going to end well. But you see what else this represents is the AI takeover, and how autonomous systems this is like the Luddites are finally right about something, because everything else is in the red. Even the companies that leverage NVIDIA's technology, which is most of the big tech firms, okay? Everything is in the red. Now, it's not saying this is going to continue forever, but it just goes to show that for me personally, I think NVIDIA is really the last hope for the market. There really is no other, big Tesla type stock that's going to carry the market forwards. If NVIDIA can't do it, it's over. And guess what? That brings us to our next story. Where are all of the NVIDIA chips made? Right here in Taiwan. Right there in Taiwan. And they have a kill switch. According to TSMC, the Taiwan chip manufacturing company, they have a kill switch if, in such case, the Chinese take control of the island, they can suspend production. And it's so valuable to the military-industrial complex that they will do it. In fact, the Taiwanese got a little upset with some American senators who over a year ago were saying that we need to ensure that we destroy these chip facilities. They are that important that we need to destroy them before the Chinese take them over. Now, I've heard some people say, well, the Chinese are further along in their ability, their lithography, or whatever you call it, that creates the chips. Right now, as far as we know, on paper, they can do down to what, like maybe they're going to have like a 0.7 nanometer chip, whereas Taiwanese are already going down to like the single nanometer scale soon, which I don't know what that really, does that just mean your computer takes up a bigger room? I don't know. Then, of course, there's quantum computing, right? So, but either way, it's this important that the Americans are making a run for it in this direction, because they are now mobilizing their naval forces. I believe there is a strike carrier group. They're probably going to make another pass through the Taiwan Strait, another provocative move. But the Chinese are getting ready. They've been training to take out American strike carrier groups. They have simulated strike carrier groups in the desert that they've been testing on. They've been doing nuclear war games. Who knows, the extent of their nuclear bunkers, far more vast than ours. The Chinese foreign minister said that Taiwan independence forces will be left with their heads broken and blood flowing. That's a powerful statement. And those are the kind of statements, if you hear any Chinese government official saying that, you know it's been greenlit by the man himself. And I've never, ever heard them speak so aggressively. And this isn't just out of the blue. It's because La Ching-te took over as the island's new president. And of course, he is I think they expected him to be a bit more sympathetic to the Chinese predicament, but it turns out he's not. He's just as pro-American as anyone else. So that's not good, because of course now Taiwan has American Green Berets in there training them 50 miles from China, just poking the dragon. And of course, do you think the elites care that we're not going to have stuff at Walmart, that we're not going to have stuff at Costco, that we're not going to have any more phones and anything, every single thing for the most part, most of which is probably frivolous shit we don't need anyways, to be brutally honest. Maybe our lives will get better when we have to go back, to the, what are we in, the third industrial revolution? Fourth industrial, I don't know, before China anyways, whatever shit we had in the 70s, that's what it's going to be again. That's what we're going to make. Just really rudimentary tools with no moving parts and no synthetic, 3D printed cool shit. We're not going to get that anymore. It's going to be kind of boring, to be brutally honest, but I think our lives are going to be more enriched when we don't have cheap shit from China anymore. The drills also serve as a strong punishment for the separate acts of Taiwan independence. Now again, these drills keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they really start to look like an embargo, a blockade. Now, this map doesn't do it justice, but Taiwan is actually huge. So to do a blockade of an island like this and keep the Americans out, even for the Chinese, would be very difficult. I mean, let's just see, what are we at here in terms of Do I have my measurement tool, line tool? Okay, yeah, so 350 kilometers. That's a long way. I mean, you need a lot of ships to cover all that. Now, China's shipbuilding capacity is a lot. So you have 350 multiplied by, just say 100. So you're talking about 35,000 square kilometers, more than that. I mean, it's a lot of territory to cover, and you have most of the world's sea traffic going through there. I don't know the exact amount, but it's like 40%. And if they have to go around because of the ocean currents and traveling from the US across the Pacific, it really complicates things a lot. So things would have to be rerouted. If anything was being shipped here, it's just going to be chaos, man. It's going to be total, like we are just everywhere. Sparks are flying. These are the Taiwanese moving their missile defense. So this video is claiming, anyways, everything is concealed and covered, being very discreet about what they got, which is smart. And of course, the Chinese are mobilizing. And the Chinese have been mobilizing for a long time. They've been preparing the populations who are across the street from Taiwan for war for some time. They have bunkers made. Everybody has an app on their phone as to where to go when the shit hits the fan. They've been moving lots of military assets, forward deploying a lot of assets to that region. I don't think the military buildup is there yet for a landed invasion, but I don't think you'd want to do that. I think what you'd want to do is try to strangle them and then play a game of chicken with the Americans, because the Americans would then try to break the blockade, and then that's where the shooting would start. I don't think the Chinese or the Americans necessarily want that yet, but it's a situation in which the longer you let the Chinese prepare, because the Chinese are able to build out military power faster than the Americans, every year that goes by that America waits to interdict in their progress it means it's going to be like 10 years more difficult down the road. So they have to make a move right now. So the US is sending their aircraft carriers into position. As I recently indicated, the TSMC has a chip kill switch if China invades. So ASML Holding and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company have ways to disable the world's most sophisticated chip manufacturing machines. Imagine how far this would set us back, just as a species, in terms of AI. Maybe it's for the better, because we don't know what the result of this AGI is going to be in the first place, right? But it would set us back decades if this war actually does break out and they do proceed with taking out the chip manufacturing facilities. I'm not sure what exactly that's going to mean. They're probably not going to go scorched earth, I don't think, because they would want to perhaps retake those things, so they might want to just cook some of the components and make it so that it couldn't be modified. But Taiwan is mobilizing for war, man. They are getting ready. Now, in the Middle Eastern front, I can't believe how long this video is. Whoa, let me just, before I forget, oh yeah, North Korea is building more nuclear weapons. It's confirmed from space, and they're also building a joint submarine base with the Chinese and the Russians. Before we get into this, okay, so the ocean temperatures, this is normal. This is what it is now. Okay, it's like off the charts. So they're predicting that there's going to be just insane hurricane activity this year. So these are the ocean temperatures, record. Everywhere is a record. The oceans are burning up, and that means higher and lower pressure colliding, which means we could see some apocalyptic category 6 hurricanes this year. Bird flu pandemic. You know, I didn't know this, guys, but there is a website called Kalshi where you can bet on anything, okay? You can like play it like a stock market. So you buy in. So if you think that bird flu has a chance this year, you buy yes for 21 cents, no for 85 cents, and then you come back and this is actually fully regulated, believe it or not. But so 21% of people think the bird flu, but this changes, right? Because it's a big, I do not recommend you waste your money on this shit. Don't do it. But here's what I got for you, okay? H5N1 bird flu highly likely to arrive in New Zealand in the near future. And recently, Australia had somebody come from India, a child, in fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, had bird flu, recovered, and the story was just released yesterday. So they didn't tell people about it. Now, we haven't seen sustained human-to-human transmission or even human-to-human transmission yet, as far as I know, but it's only a matter of time. This is everywhere. It's in the cows. It's jumping the species. It is ubiquitous as all hell. And look at Moderna's stock. What a surprise. Moderna's stock pumping. I mean, it is, we're up, holy smokes. They are nearly up 50% in a year. On what news? Because you know the other intervention, nobody's getting that anymore, right? I mean, I'm sure some people are. Is there some other big biotech? Yeah, year to date, 51%. That is insane. And look at this. HHS advances plan to produce 4.8 million H5N1. Just in case, you know. And I don't know if that's common. That might be common. Either way, this all points towards that's the rug pull, man. That is the one, you know, that's that card that could be played. And they have a plan for it. And the fact that they're being so complacent about it, they being the media, when they're so used to scaring the shit out of people with that, when they hear this is their opportunity. I mean, this is the opportunity right now. If your goal was to get people locked down and stuff, if your goal was to, you know, scare people and get them all jabbed, then this is your opportunity to do that. But they're not doing it yet. And the reason why, I think, I saved the best for last, is because maybe they want it to spread first. Maybe they want it to reach a point of saturation that it jumping the species barrier is inevitable, and then they have all this stuff ready, and that's when they're going to roll it out. Because remember, guys, just remember what we were told when the whole thing started in 2020. Some of you might not be old enough now. It was that long ago. Remember what they told us? They said, don't worry. You know, we don't have to close the border with China. And they got mad because Trump wanted to close the border. And I mean, they just get mad at anybody who wanted to do everything, anything. And yeah, don't worry, don't wear masks. Don't worry, yeah, just keep going out and doing stuff. And then all of a sudden, bam, 180, right? Or if you're Annalena Baerbock, 360. That's an inside joke, only for those in the geopolitical know. But it's not looking good. They can pull this one. And what I'm really curious to know is, how is it going to play into the war? How is this going to play into World War III is the question. Is it going to be good for it? Is it going to be bad for it? Have I even talked about I talked about the UK campaign, right? And the psychology of that. How they, you know, they're trying to get people, they don't want it to say a week because that's going to scare people. They don't want to say 2 weeks, 3 months. They know 3 meals to anarchy, so they say 72 hours, even though that Latvian Prepare for War guide had 72 hours on the front. Then you actually start reading all the details. I did a video on that last week. Go check it out. Post the link in the description below. I'll probably forget because this video is way too long and I got to go to bed afterwards. But if you've seen it, you've seen it. Anyways, Latvians released this emergency guide called 72 Hours How to Prepare for War. And everything in it is a guide for what to do for like years into the war, right? How to survive. And there's actually some really good tips. This is just Mickey Mouse fluffery. I would, you would be wise to, oh yeah, I think I recall I did talk about that. Man, I'm getting old. Whew, I shouldn't say that because old people will be offended. I'll catch up. We're all going the same place. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? Okay, the Middle East, man. I gotta say, Peter Zion, I don't know. That guy just reminds me of, I've actually wanted to have him on the channel just to kind of pick his brain about a few things, his geographical deterministic viewpoints of stuff. But I just think the guy reminds me of the monorail character off The Simpsons, you know, really smug and just this kind of know-it-all, speaking way too confidently. about things that may or may not be the case. Anyways, he's saying that his essential thinking about Iran and nukes is that they're too dumb to make nukes. Now, there's a few things he overlooks. One thing he does say is that in order for Iran to effectively have a nuclear weapon, they need to have the delivery system. If they make the nuclear weapon before they've created the delivery system, then countries will gang up on them and intercept that progress. And he's right about that. But I'm not sure if he's just downplaying the relationship that they have with the North Koreans and the Chinese and the Russians, and the fact that they now just got 25 Su-35 fighter jets from the Russians that I'm sure could be modified to carry some level of nuclear cruise missile. You have their ballistic missile capabilities. I mean, they could launch nukes. So the fact that he's saying all that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know who he's speaking to or on behalf of, but it doesn't seem like it's the truth, okay? Things are heating up in Israel right now with Hezbollah. I don't know how the war hasn't just been called a war yet, because you're talking about Hezbollah firing in the hundreds of rockets in a day. Today, they unloaded 100 missiles against Israel, causing wildfires. This has been something that's been happening quite frequently along the border. Israel killed a Hezbollah commander, and in response, they've been launching a bunch of missiles. The Rafah invasion is happening. We're just not hearing about it. So remember all that hubbub about, well, we can't, we got to make sure you have a humanitarian thing all set up, or we're not going to give you weapons. And the United States just gave them weapons anyway, and everybody's forgotten about the fact that the Rafah invasion is being ramped up every single day. It's ongoing, it's happening, and now they released the video. What convenient timing of the girls who were, and they overdubbed this fake overdub. So there's so much shady propaganda stuff coming out of that. And now you have the stuff going on with the ICC, where Netanyahu is ironically threatening the Hague of all places, which the multi-layers of irony, the fact that we are supporting the Azov battalion in Ukraine, we're giving actual Nazis standing ovations. Well, it just, everything is just in knots, man. I can't even, well, what's the point of even talking about this? We're hooped. We're hooped. I was going to say the F word. It's that late in the video, I could get away with it, but I won't. So, I mean, in terms of the case of Raisi, and the fact that everybody already forgot that, Iranian president had his helicopter crash, and there wasn't even bad weather. Now, we're being told there wasn't bad weather. The other two helicopters survived. They said there was no bad weather. So this had to be some crazy catastrophic failure. Was it induced by some kinetic projectile, some non-explosive projectile? Was it cyber? Was it electronic warfare that caused something to seize up? Was it something done to the helicopter beforehand? Was there some sort of martyr on the helicopter that took his own life and took everybody down with them? But how could they know that there was going to be fog if it was a planned operation? So there's still the possibility that it was, but I don't know. Israel is recalling ambassadors from countries like Norway and Ireland because of the recognition of Palestine and their insistence that they will abide by any sort of ICC, International Criminal Court arrest warrant. Guys, this video is too damn long. If you want to support the channel, gear up at CanadianPreparedness.com, but just do me a favor. Take care of yourself. The most important thing you can do is get your health up. Get your health up, get your mind right, quit those bad habits. Don't be greedy. This is not a time for rapaciousness and frivolousness. This is a time to be very calculated in your moves in life and just to take care of yourself, okay? Because you are the most important part of your preparedness plan, your physical capabilities and your knowledge. Go check out the videos that we just released with Dr. Timogen Tan. This guy has military experience. He spent 60 days, almost one, on the season of Alone that he was on, and he's a medical doctor. It's a wealth of information that we provide. We did a series of videos with him. We'll continue to roll those out in the coming weeks ahead. And we got a lot of other great stuff that we're hopefully going to get in before the schnitzel hits the fitzel. Thanks for watching, folks. Canadian Prepper out.